on our call, I believe we have all the members of our planning firm. Austin, are you available? Austin. So just to set the stage for what we're doing tonight, obviously we had hoped to do this in person, but we know that that was not going to be possible. So in order to not delay this, we are doing this virtual option. But essentially where we're at in the master planning process, the team, and Austin will speak about it a little bit, they've been just, doing their research, looking at our documents, reviewing the sites of the parks physically, and now we're in the information gathering stage. So that has kicked off last week. They met with the Youth Commission. Tonight they're meeting with this commission. They also have meetings scheduled with sports groups in town, other stakeholders that we've identified. So they're making a lot of calls and gathering information. So tonight, they have a series of questions. I mean, we can talk about anything under the sun related to the planning process, but they're trying to gather as much information from this commission as they can to help inform the next step, which is this community survey, the statistically valid survey. So based on what they're hearing, this is going to help them develop the questions that we're going to ask the public at large. So this will not be the only opportunity to engage with this group, but it's really the first information gathering meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, so with that, I will turn it over to Austin to start this process and introduce our activity.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Austin, and hopefully you can hear me. And if there's any audio troubles throughout this, just use the chat box or yell at me or something. So I'll be the facilitator of our discussion tonight, and joining us is Jonathan and Holly with Activitas. They're also part of the consulting team. So it's Activitas and Pros Consulting, who I represent, that are working on the master plan for the department. So as Josh said, we wish we were there in person with you all, and we were actually scheduled to be there almost a month ago, I believe, was the week that we were scheduled to be there with you all. And that was right when decisions had to be made in terms of traveling, in terms of the sheltering in place and all that. So unfortunately, we're supposed to be there with you on, I think it was a Monday or Tuesday, and we literally made the decision like Thursday or Friday before because of just what was going on. So thanks for accommodating us and doing it through this avenue. And so, as Josh mentioned, this is really the data collection phase, and so we have a series of questions that we want to ask you tonight, but we're not fishing for any type of answers, but we are looking at the themes in totality across all the different stakeholder groups that we'll talk to really try to figure out what are those things that we need to test with the larger populace for that statistically valid survey. So what you provide us is really a good context of what we need to study more, what we need to look into, what we need to ask more questions about. So I'm going to share my screen here in a little bit. And I know not everybody is actually on the computer version of our meeting. That's fine, because I will state the questions out loud. So for those of you on the phone as well, feel free to please chime in. I'll state the questions, but you just won't see the questions listed here on the screen. So I'm going to share this. Share. So for those of you that are on the computer, do you see a Word document that's being shared?
Yes. Yes.
All right. I'm not going to take notes in real time. Jonathan and Holly are also going to be helping by taking notes. I'm going to concentrate on the facilitation of the conversation. But before I start kind of asking you questions, we just have this kind of informal dialogue. Are there any particular questions that anybody has for us, the consultant team, during this process?
I don't.
No. Okay, that sounds good. And again, if some of you don't have answers for some of these questions, don't feel obligated to have a response for every question, but we do know that this is you probably do have a lot of opinions about Parks and Recreation and youth and community services, and so we want to hear your opinion. So I'm going to ask the question, and then I'm not going to necessarily call somebody out to respond, but we're going to do the best we can here to kind of not talk over each other, but make sure that we get as much responses as we can. So the first question is just kind of starting off with some context is, it's a multi-part question, but one, we want to know, are you a user of the park system? And if you are, just give us a little bit of background about what do you like about the system in terms of parks, green space, and outdoor facilities? And then also, maybe what about programs, special events, and indoor spaces? So kind of a multi-part question. Do you use the park system? And then kind of tell us, what do you like about it? I'll open that up for discussion.
Well,
Go
oh,
ahead.
I don't know. I love the parks. I've been going to them my entire lives. They've certainly improved over the years because of the amount of people that we have now in Bristol. There are a few limitations where I think that some of the programs don't have enough spaces, so people are put on hold. So that's a little upsetting for some that have had the program. For instance, the swimming program for the young children, if they were doing it and then all of a sudden now they can't, that becomes an issue, I guess. The special events have all been great. I think that it would be nice to tie in the parks together in terms of being accessible by bike or walking somehow. And I think that it would be nice to have some sort of a skating facility, indoor or outdoor. And I
Ice
believe that we
skating?
should, yes,
Okay.
ice skating. And I
Roller
believe,
skating. I thought you were roller skating.
oh no, I'm thinking winter. Winter programs, I'm thinking, but as well as pickleball is what I'm as well thinking. I'm sure you have heard that already, but that's all I have.
Thank you, Cindy.
I'm a user of the parks. We like to hike, and so any chance that we get out and hike in any open space is something that my daughter and my husband and I enjoy to do. I have used the park system extensively with I have a 14-year-old now, but when she was young, we used a lot of the programs for the park and rec. The summer program, the summer camp program is, and everybody says what a great bargain it is. It actually is a really reasonable price for what you get. I do think that it would be nice to have an indoor ice skating rink. I know we had talked about that. I think that towns that have that, they draw a lot of folks for that. And I know that we have space that isn't being used on the Robert Street property that we've talked for years about what we could do with that. And that might be something that folks would be a little bit more open to rather than the additional fields. I can also say as a parent of a girl who played softball, park space for fields was always an issue. We always seem to get the short end of the stick with the softball program. There's just not enough field. So those are some of the things I think that are positives and that I think we could expand on.
Sure. Thank you. I think I saw you gearing up to say something.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I got a lot to say. No, I'm a user of the parks. I worked there as a kid. My kids were younger. We used the park system extensively. My grandkids are now coming along. They go to swimming. They go to basketball. I love going to Muzzy Field, watching ball games. I love the concerts at Rockwell Park. The disc golf, they had that pro tournament, was unbelievable. I think there's a lot of great things that this park department does for the community, and at such a reasonable cost that sometimes we've had problems with too many people coming from out of town, crowding our own residents out, which is a testament to our park system. Sandy mentioned fields. We've been discussing fields for probably 7 years. Anyways,
At least.
that's a huge problem. I'm one that doesn't necessarily. We have a lack of fields. I think we have a lack of playable fields. So I think we need to. And one of my points of having a master plan was to take inventory of what we got in the city that can be used for fields, and then maintain them and upgrade them so kids don't break their ankle on school fields because they're neglected. So I think what I really looking forward to come out of this is, you know, a systematic direction for us to take when we're looking at spending money instead of just going where the fire is.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. I have a couple of comments.
Mm-hmm.
I am also a user of the parks. I've been a user of the parks ever since I was a kid. And I think we have a very good diversified use of the parks, especially the last few years with the mountain bike trails. And matter of fact, my wife and I, a few weeks ago, actually walked the whole disc frisbee course at Rockwell Park, which was quite amazing for two 70-year-olds. I don't know if we were going to make it, but we did it. But it's really a hidden gem. But you know, they talked about the skating, you know, possibility of indoor skating or, you know, ice skating things, and I'm certainly not against that. My only concern would be to balance that. Anything new we do, I think we have to really focus also on maintaining what we presently have. You know, there's a lot of basketball courts and there's some tennis courts, you know, at Peck Park, and a lot of the basketball courts that are around need repair. You know, they're beyond band-aiding anymore. They need to be totally resurfaced. So I just would be cautious, you know, endeavoring into, you know, something major at the expense of not maintaining what we presently have. That would be my biggest concern.
Absolutely. And that's a very important concept. So you can bring that forward.
I'm good. That's good. Thank you.
And I also grew up here, and my entire family uses the parks. And I think one nice thing about our parks is that we strive to, like, if you have a toddler, if you have a elementary age child, like there does seem to be a little something for everyone. But that's why I'm excited about this, because I would like to see that expanded, you know, all the way to, like Cindy said, the pickleball, and improving the courts we do have. And I'm also excited because where I live, we're not in walking distance to we're walking distance to open space, but not something that the kids can actively do.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. Let me ask you all this question now. Because the master plan it's really comprehensive, and it's really looking at the organization as a whole. So we talk about everything from finances, we talk about land, facilities, programs, amenities, maintenance and operations, etc. But part of our scope is also to look a little bit at specific. And so one of those specific things that was brought to our attention through the scoping process was Page Park. And so again, our overall work is really looking at comprehensively looking at your city and the offerings and how you're functioning in the direction. But we're also taking a little bit of a specific approach to Page Park in particular. So that's why this question that I'm going to ask you is a little bit specific to Page Park. So it's a four-parter. So essentially, and this is what one of the tasks that Activitas is actually going to be really gearing in and focusing on is kind of the layout and the elements that are associated with Page Park. So we want to know specifically about Page, what about the park works, what maybe doesn't work, what can maybe be improved upon that's there, and is there anything that could be added to the park in terms of facilities or amenities that experiences that you think would benefit it. So again, this is a very specific question to that location, but we just want to hear a little bit more context about what you think works well, and maybe is missing or needs to be improved about Page.
I'll take that. One of the things I've noticed over the years is that the drainage there has been an issue, and I know they've been addressing that. There's some on the side of the softball field there. There's a little river that runs through, and sometimes that gets a little bit high. And it's, hard, people jump across it and it's not necessarily ideal. There's also not any path to walk up to like the pool from those lower fields. You're walking on the grass, but if you're walking in the road, there's not any kind of sidewalk area to get up there. And I think with the pool being done, I think we should really be thinking about having some sort of way to get up there safely and not be walking on the road. I know that the playground at the upper playground got taken down last year, so there's a lot of space that's not used. When I was a kid, we used to go up there. There was a basketball court in the woods. We'd go up and watch the kids from, Bristol all play. It was a lot of fun. I got to know a lot of kids from other schools just going up and hanging out up there. And then the pavilion up by the lake, by the pond. Sorry about that. The pavilion that's up by the pond. We used to be used. It was open. We would get hot chocolate when we'd ice skate. It doesn't seem like we've been able to ice skate in a few years. It just hasn't been getting cold enough, but making use of that building. And then the other thing, there's that building when you come in the back entrance that's kind of empty, and I think it's pretty dilapidated. I don't know if there's any way to rescue that. It's just kind of a cool space that maybe could be used for something. I don't know what. That's my kind of input. Oh, and this when we were kids, there was a tow rope and you could ski down that side hill. I know that's certainly a safety issue, but that's a cool hill that's just really not used.
Thank you.
Well, Sandy, I agree with you about having access. The road is very dangerous. I think everybody agrees. When you're walking from the lower end of Page Park from King Street up to the pool, on that road, you're taking your life in your hands. And actually, a lot of high school kids use that road to get to school, which is an issue. One of my concerns with what I'd like to see, Paige, I think with the playground by King Street is very popular. And if there's a game going on or something, the parking in that parking lot is very limited. I think the parking down below really needs to be expanded. And I think one way that could happen would be either to relocate the basketball court to a different location and use the basketball court area for parking, or consider, I know this is going out of Page Park a little bit, but it's related. But you think about it, we have a basketball court at Page Park. You go a half a mile down the street and we have a basketball court at Wilson Field. And then you go about another mile and we have a basketball court at the Casey Field area. So we really have 3 basketball courts within like a 2-mile distance. So I think that's something to consider. So I think parking down below for the playground, and not only that, but I think getting the basketball court out of that area by the playground where there's young kids, it takes the teenagers away and it takes that element away from the younger kids. I think it'd be a safer environment besides adding more parking. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bob and Sandy. And the things that greatly work are the tennis courts. They're used a lot, and then with the lighting, that really benefits having being played. I mean, it looks like to me that the basketball courts though are being used in all of those areas. It's a big draw for people. I mean, I don't think that an indoor basketball facility there would be good, but I think we do need it. This is going further into the questioning, but maybe to help with that, it would be having some sort of an indoor facility that people could use. But the things that could be improved upon are definitely that pavilion and utilizing it more, and that pond possibly, hopefully somehow draining it maybe to be able to use it for skating or such.
Sure.
Yeah, I think Page Park is really the blank canvas. We were able to do great things down at Rockwell, and in my mind, Page, we're going to have a brand new pool, the basketball courts, and the baseball diamond, and tennis. All those things get a lot of work, get a lot of use, but there's nothing to connect them. So people aren't, coming to Page as much. And the disc golf, I mean, that gets used a lot. there is a lot of space. I remember Sandy too, when I used to work there, and the playground and the basketball courts and all that were up in the woods, and there's a lot of space up in there that could be utilized. What really doesn't work is they're not connected. You're going to go to the pool, you're going to go. If you get tired of watching a game, it's hard to go for a walk. When I've been at games there, you got to walk up that hill and get to the pool, and you got to go up the big hill because there's no walkway, there's no easy way. So some way that we could connect the things there that give people an opportunity just to walk and enjoy it. And again, there's a lot of space there, so I don't have specific ideas, but pickleball's been talked about, and we tried pickleball out at Riley Field, but it's out in the sun, and some of us older people don't like playing in the sun so much. And so if we were able to put maybe pickleball up in the shaded areas up there, it would get usage, and usage keeps vandals out. So, but I think it's really a place we can look at doing a lot of stuff with.
Yeah, I want to just build on to what Bob just said. I think one of the main things I want to see come out of the Page Park plan is a trail system that kind of connects the whole park together. I think one of the things that Rockwell does really well is that trail system that you really can you see the whole gambit of the park through it. But at Page, like Bob mentioned, you really can't. There's a disconnect with the connectivity. But I could see a trail even by the lower field, starting around there, walking up the hill. I just through the woods. I think if we had a trail system there, that would draw different people into that park and give you something to do while your kids are playing sports or at the pool or whatever. I think that would be a big win.
Yeah, there's a ton of space up on the hill there, like where there's an old road that just kind of ends up there. When we were up doing the trash pickup, there was a whole bunch of space I didn't even know was part of the park that's just not used at all. So yeah, the trails would be nice, having a place to just kind of hike that's not a crazy hike, but just getting out in the shade and getting outside.
To a bigger picture question now, so a little bit back to the macro. Like I mentioned when we first started this conversation, you all are really helping us with the context and laying the foundation for our research here for the master plan. So this is what the third question here really gets at. So what do you believe community residents value most about parks, recreation, youth, and community services within Bristol? So what do you think the community values in terms of parks and recreation, your community? This is really going to help us understand a little bit more.
I think keeping the cost down is what they value.
Yeah, value.
The value of what you're getting. You're getting a lot for nothing, really.
And variety too. The variety and the value, I think, are the two big ones in my opinion.
I agree. I agree with those statements wholeheartedly.
I think the first thing they might complain, and so I feel they do appreciate it, is when things are maintained and look good. Like you'll see comments about it, because right when there's something, say a holiday weekend or something, right away you hear them complaining.
Yeah.
And I think the wide variety of classes that are offered, people really appreciate.
And I think something that we're doing a much better job is of telling people what we have. I mean, I still get amazed when I tell people, oh yeah, we got probably the best disc golf course in New England here. And they don't even know we got disc golf. And when you make them aware, I've had other grandparents call me and tell me what a great thing Santa's Village was, and they had never known about it until they're starting to see or up talking about it or something. So I think we when they know about what we have, they are just blown away by what we have to offer and the value compared. I can't tell you how many times I've told people what I pay for my grandson to go to the pool for lessons and what they're paying at the Y or the communities. It's like they're just blown away. So I think we have to tell our story better, and we're doing that. We're doing a great job, but I think the value that they see when they find out what programs, what all the things we offer, really blows people away.
And I do think that people do like the open space parts of them as well.
Okay. Let me ask you this, and several of you have already started going in this direction, whether it was kind of in the introduction kind of discussion we have, or if it was specific to Page Park. But are there any specific recreation amenities or facilities? So thinking about kind of that built environment kind of structure, is there anything missing within the community? You know, how we already talked about pickleball, we already talked about some trails and everything. This is another opportunity to kind of really drive that point home. But are there anything specific that you might see in other communities and say, oh, it'd be great if we had that here, or you know what, Bristol residents have been asking for X for 5 years, and so now's the time to kind of act on it. What's missing in terms of facilities and amenities within the park system?
Well, I had seen on the Connecticut Forest and Park that Josh had shared with us that there are facilities that you can, or programs or apparatuses that you can have for the elderly. So we don't really have a lot for the elderly in that regard, like a playground, so to speak.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And that kind of falls under a lot of different lenses. I mean, there's the term of all-inclusive playgrounds, but there's also adult playgrounds and adult type of functions and features. And so I think that hits on many different levels what we're bringing up. Okay.
Right. It could be also disabled for the disabled as well then.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that we might be missing is, we have the mobile showcase that goes around. We have the summer concerts, something more permanent, like something for people to showcase their arts, and maybe have like an open mic night. If it's, I don't want to say downtown, but necessarily, but it could be within the parks, just to showcase their talents, like a stage, permanent stage, more so like an amphitheater. Britain has a beautiful one. Do concerts there, and it's already there. No, you don't have to move it. Already solid, set up. Something like geared towards some of the arts and culture.
Yeah, Scott, I don't think I want to hear you sing though. That's all.
Tonight. The other thing too is addressing facilities for some of our teens, including them into, when we talk about facilities like ice skating rink or something to that nature, some type of facility geared towards, ages. When you talk about the seniors, we have to think of all the age groups as well.
Yeah. So that's an important concept too. Some park systems will actually physically list out the facilities and amenities and/or programs and services offered, write age segments across the top, and then put a check mark next to what experiences are available out there and what target audiences perceivably use those experiences to actually get at, is there a gap somewhere? Are we missing something? Is it young adults? Is it teens? Is is there a lack of experiences kind of geared towards these ages? So that's an important concept that you bring forward.
If I can add one more thing, an indoor like basketball, like I touched on it with the Page thing, but some sort of facility that the park department can use so they don't have to rely on the school system. We could use that, I guess.
So more dedicated indoor kind of multifunctional court space kind of.
Yes, and that could be for a lot of different ages as well then.
Yeah, my daughter played AAU basketball, and traveling around to some of the facilities. I mean, some of them are really nice, almost like field house type setups where they've got 3 courts and have multiple games going on at a time, which draws a ton of people from all over to come. We could, instead of the Bristol schools going to all these other towns to play AAU tournaments, we could actually host them here.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
In that respect, I mean, I'm sure it's way off our radar, but the high schools have indoor track, and Josh, I don't know how much money that costs, but the kids, I'm sure at Eastern too, they run around the halls, and we have some top runners. And I think the relay team was fourth in the country. It seems like there's a lot of kids interested in doing that in the winter, and there's no facility for them.
That's a great point, Paula. You touch on some of the stars that come out of Bristol and things to that nature. We're doing a lot of our sports and facilities by the season. So baseball is only a certain amount of time because that's all we have space for. We use it when it's outdoors. We don't have that complex, like Paul is saying. So that's a great point. Having it year round. Let us have something that we can try
Right.
year round.
Yeah. That kind of goes back to the even the ice skating comment. Before season, year round. Like, what are those experiences you can have dedicated year round activity, whether it's indoor or outdoor? I think those are good points you can bring it up.
Like a field house that would have multi-purpose.
Sure.
Facilities that we go to have a track around the outside of and the courts. Basketball courts are kind of in the center of them. So.
Staying in the same mindset a little bit, but I'm going to flip it to instead of facilities and amenities that are missing, what about these programs or services? So are there any particular recreation programs or services missing, or they exist, but they just need enhancement from the department moving forward? So thinking now a little bit more about the experiences and the programs that are out there. Is there things missing or things that need to be enhanced?
Well, one thing that was missing for years, and I think it's just come back the last few years, was like adult softball, slow pitch softball, and I think that's only been started again the last couple of years. I mean, Page Park used to be every night there was games going on, and even there was a women's league for a while, and I don't know. Now then everybody was going to Farmington to play or going someplace else, but seems like that's in a lot of states there's a lot of softball programs for elderly in different age groups, and that might be something that might have some interest.
I think we don't know. I mean, just looking back when when the disc golf guys came to the park board, I was like, you take a frisbee and throw it in a net. What are you guys talking about? And same with the mountain bike. I had no idea that was so in demand. So I think being able to look at nationally, what are the trending things that I don't know about, and probably most people in town don't know about, that we could look and say, oh, look what they're doing out there, and start to bring that stuff in. So, I don't know what I don't know kind of here.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because one thing that I'm assuming will make its way onto the survey, and again, I know what assuming makes of people, so I'm saying assuming, is there is a national trend with like esports and e-gaming. And so that's something that nationally is a national trend. And so lately we've been testing that locally, because there's some places that we work that, yeah, it is on the uptick locally, and it seems to have some legs. And then there's some places that we work that we ask that, and it's a non-starter. And so like that, to your point, Bob, that's kind of an example that we can bring forward from a national standpoint and kind of help test that on the local level to see if there are things that we don't know what we don't know about how the national trends apply to the local Bristol area. So that's a great point.
One of the things that's been missing, in my opinion, and this was from my own personal experience, was the summer camp time weren't amenable for me, as far as 9 to 3 didn't really work. And so I know this year we're going to be doing before and after care, so that's a huge enhancement that I know is already underway. And so that was Josh kind of spearheaded that, I believe. So that's a big one. I think that's going to be a game changer for a lot of folks. And it's probably going to increase the usage of the program because people now will have the ability to get their kids there and then get to work, put in a full day, and then come and pick their kids up. They're willing to pay that extra money. So
I think the only problem that could use enhancement would be, I would say, is being able to offer more classes when the class becomes full. When you see that there's a need for more classes, that it's available. I don't know if that's even possible because of time and space and people, but that again, that's one of the problems I see or heard.
Right. Yeah,
especially learn to swim is big for that. I know that was
Yes.
a tough one to get. People would stay up till midnight to be able to get
Yes.
into the classes.
Yes.
That's a good point because when part of our master plan will be a dedicated recreation program assessment. And one of the last examples that I have is we worked in Kent, Washington, just outside of Seattle, and one of their saturated programs was their therapeutic recreation program. But if you looked at the numbers, they had a wait list as long as their registered list. It was physically, they didn't have space. So to your point, Cindy, it could be that we just can't offer more because it might be a spatial thing where we just physically can't put anybody else somewhere.
Right.
It's a great point.
I think adding on to that, Austin, I think that's an area that we definitely could expand on. So I would be really curious through this survey what those needs look like. We do have a handful of dedicated TR special needs programs, but we don't really have a full-blown, offering. So if you're someone with a disability, we don't have 20 programs for you to do. We have a couple niche activities. So I would be curious what the need is from that demographic.
We also don't have adaptive programming curriculum built into our regular program. So if we have someone who is interested but needs some adaptive
Services, yeah.
services within that program, we're kind of just working program to program, case to case, as opposed to kind of having something built in where we can say, look, we have this up front for you. This is what you have.
Right. So it's almost like creating an inclusion statement, but then also moving towards maybe hiring some certified therapeutic recreation specialists as part of the programming staff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And something I think we talked about in previous meetings, but I'd love to see the mountain bike trails, the idea of expanded, where Josh, I think you mentioned having bike rentals, and more importantly, offering classes and teaching the kids how to ride a mountain bike properly. So I think there'd be more use in the trails, and I think even across country, they have teams and things like that. I think it could really blossom if given the opportunity to learn how to ride a mountain bike.
Sure.
And the other little thing is I feel that Bristol has a large population of a decent amount of homeschoolers, and it might be nice. I don't know, Sarah, are we taking advantage of maybe offering classes that would suit them?
Sure. Honestly, I think the time that we're in right now, I think everybody's experiencing a new way of delivering programs in general. So you might be hitting on something that is dovetailing nicely with just kind of the situation that a lot of public parks and recreation agencies are handling now, and it's a different method of delivering services.
That's right. I forgot we're all homeschoolers right now.
Okay, thank you. All right, there's a couple more questions left here, so I'm going to start bringing this up to some bigger pictures here. So this could be a challenging question, and I admit that, but we also are the ones that put the question, so we kept it in. But so what are the key problems in the city that you believe parks, recreation, youth, and community services can help solve? So in other words, trying to make you think a little bit broader here about this Parks and Recreation Department, and merging with youth and community services. Maybe some of those key City of Bristol challenges or issues that Parks and Recreation can really help address or somewhat alleviate.
Bringing families together. functions that have the family involved. I think that they can help greatly with that, and that some of the concerts certainly do that. But yes, definitely family functions.
I think one of the problems in society as a whole is lack of fitness, lack of health, and I think Parks and Rec can play. We talked about this a few years ago, and when we were talking about the synthetic turf committee, and we talked about doing like a year-long program, Get Healthy Bristol. I think I saw it like in Baltimore somewhere, tried it, and they had a program where people were engaged on a full year to get healthy and you know, when you get people out and moving and outside, it solves it addresses a lot of the problems, like, you know, the youth problems and depression and all these things that afflict society. I think the Parks and Recreation is the linchpin that could help people in these times. You're seeing it now. I see more people walking outside my house now than I've ever. I didn't know these people were in my neighborhood, and they're just itching to get outside. And so I think one of the big problems that we could address as a park department and as a park system, which also would dovetail on problems that the kids are having today and community, is just attacking, you know, general health and encouraging people maybe through a program online, log in your stuff. You know, when you hold an exercise program at the senior center, it's mobbed. You know, so those kinds of things on a citywide basis, you know, might be engaging for some folks, and I think it has a lot of spin-off benefits to a lot of problems.
Big one for me is just is to instill in children, especially, an appreciation for nature and for taking care of what's around us. And you know, I was at Rockwell Park one day, and I saw this little girl. She was eating some French fries, and she threw the wrapper on the ground. And I went over to her and I said, "Excuse me, I think you dropped something." And she just looked at me like I was crazy. And so the littering is such a huge issue for me. It's like one of those things that's my biggest pet peeve in the world. If I see somebody throw something out, I do say something, and I try to say it in a non-confrontational way, like, "I'm sorry, did you realize you dropped that?" But for kids, if they learn, and it's because I learned this as a child. My mom instilled in me that when you see trash, you pick it up. You don't make it worse. Getting kids involved, and then they in turn would be able to maybe call out the adults around them doing that kind of thing and just be proponents of nature. And I think right now, with what's going on, and the fact that the world is cleaning itself in this time when we're all not out dirtying it, is a sign that, you know, we can make it better if we all do our part, even if it's just a little bit. That'd be a big one for me. I think just not littering, maybe start a local campaign at that level.
I think even building on what Sandy just said, I think this goes back to maybe programming that we're missing, or also installing nature education. But I think we should do more. I'd be curious what the desire would be for more outdoor education programs. So I think I mentioned on another meeting, but New Haven has a really robust outdoor adventure, you know, program where they take inner city kids to, you know, go whitewater river rafting and learning how to canoe and archery and hiking and camping and building those outdoor skills. So that would be something I'd be curious if there's an appetite in Bristol to do, and is there a way to link that with what we have going on at Pine Lake, you know, and have that be the hub of outdoor adventure in the city.
Or even perhaps having educational signs at different places in the parks that highlight different nature aspects and different natural resources that we have. I mean, we do have some of that, but I think it can be updated or enhanced potentially.
Especially at Kern Park, I think we've talked about that being a site where, you know, if you enhance that as an outdoor, you know, nature education classroom, you know, you can have musical elements, educational elements about the birds, et cetera. I think there's an opportunity there.
Maybe even looking into maybe a partnership with ELCCT. I don't know what the relationship is with them. I know they're a separate entity, but they do a lot of that. I know my daughter loved the summer camp up at Indian Rock. She absolutely loved it. And I think she learned a great deep love for nature just from her time out digging for salamanders. You know, she just loved all of that. So anyway.
I think just creating a place of sense, just, you know, besides the physical aspect, connecting with the parks, you know, emotionally and spiritually, just finding that sense to want to be there as well is huge.
When you talk about big picture city issues, something that comes to mind that I've been seeing, you know, nationally is this issue of homelessness, of which we do have challenges here in Bristol with that. I would be curious how the role of our department could evolve with that. I know I saw recently a webinar of what, I can't remember what state it was, but they were actually hiring homeless individuals to work in the parks to help pick up and have some stewardship around the space. So I would be curious, you know, where that's going and could our city have a role in that?
Yeah, that's
To
good.
piggyback off that, Josh, that's been on my mind rather heavily. And Ellen, you didn't get my text yet. It's coming. Finding amenities as well for not, and I don't want to scare the, you know, the public off. Amenities that some of the homelessness people need. Like right now, a big need is like showers. The showers are just like stations to like just clean themselves. You know, in this epidemic, a lot of the places that they used to go to, like McDonald's and things like that, they've closed. You're gonna start to see these people a lot. They're dirty. They just look dirty. They look dingy because they have no place to like wash up. I know that's not something that we could probably cater to, but it's a huge issue that we have to take into consideration. Bathing in our rivers, our system, we just can't have that. But
Scott, I want to talk to you about that offline because I know Brian's Angels is looking to renovate a space to put a shower in, and they're just looking for money. So maybe there's some sort of a fundraiser we could do around that to help them get the money to get that finished.
Sounds good. That's an easy fit.
She's got the space, she just doesn't have the shower built yet. So.
The other thing is that there are parks out there that will put in like outdoor shower spaces. So they're kind of walled off areas that people can take kind of showers in for their homeless population. So that's something that could be looked at.
I think building on that further, Austin, you know, I would be curious. I think in the past, this commission has talked about, there was requests before that, you know, can the outdoor pools be opened in the summer for homeless people to shower and do all that? And, you know, we're always grappling with that. Yes, there's this community need. Yes, we're a public space, but how do you couple that with, you know, families being upset when you have, you know, individuals that might be, you know, high or whatever the case be coming into a facility where they have their kids. So I think we've been grappling with how do you kind of balance the two? You know, what does that look like?
In a catch-22 too is you don't want to promote people from other towns to now, oh, Bristol has this, let's gather over here and create an overflow. So that's something to consider as well.
Yep.
Because Bristol does a great job for everyone, so it's just I just don't want to promote it.
So let me ask you this question then. So the key outcomes you would like to see come from this planning process. So this is a question that's kind of like help us help you kind of thing. So what are those kind of key outcomes you'd like to make sure that this planning process kind of does for you?
I think a strategic plan with a budget, with a maintenance plan in place of upkeep forward might be a key component to the process, and also realizing what we have in the future, what kind of growth and potential and funding that we'll need to build on what our ultimate goal is at the end of the process here.
Okay.
Well, I know there's a lot of park land and a lot of park facilities to maintain, but I think with what's going on at the Page Park pool, that's a good start. But, you know, as somebody else said, Page Park has really been neglected over the years. I mean, not neglected as far as maintenance, but major improvements like the pool. And I think an emphasis more of an emphasis might have to be placed on things in Page Park than maybe some other areas. That's just my feelings on it.
Yes, I agree. And I would also like to say that obviously phasing in ADA compliant upgrades for all across the board, and having a good plan of maintenance on board, and having like all the projects prioritized, and somehow identify future trends. I don't know, like Bob was saying, we don't know what we don't know. So if we could kind of have an idea of what the future trends are and plan on that within our plan, that would be what I'm looking at.
Absolutely.
I think what's really important is that we get a sense of what people are looking for, because just from this call, we've got a lot of ideas. I come up with a lot of ideas, and a lot of them aren't any good. But I need somebody to tell me that. And so, I mean, I think we need to listen to the community and listen to what their wants are, and then these things in some sort of priority, with just ballpark numbers. I mean, throwing out today, we want a field house. Well, where are we going to get $15 million to build a field house? So I think just maybe some benchmarks okay, if you want to build a field house, you better go find $12 million. But there may be a lot of things that we can do relatively inexpensively with what we have, just by some improvements and those kind of things, which kind of goes back to why the mayor has been a big supporter, and I've been screaming for years to get that trust money back into the park system, because we could then do things and keep things fresh. And so, but I think that's what I'm looking for is sort of like, what are people looking for? What if people don't even know what they're looking for yet? What can we be the leader on, and then plan a process, instead of what I got frustrated with a little bit was we're running to put fires out here or there, or somebody comes up with an idea and we're going to go do that. So that's what I'm looking for.
I think going off of what Bob's saying, I think some of these local neighborhood parks that we have, kind of like Kern Park, we don't have a cohesive plan for some of them. Some of them are underdeveloped in some ways, or they've been kind of neglected and now they need to come up. And so we're having these kind of neighborhood local associations and groups that are kind of just throwing out every 6 months a different idea, and they pursue it to some extent, and we endorse it, and then it's with another idea. So I think we see it particularly in Kern Park, and obviously Kern Park is not one of the areas of particular focus with it, but I think for some of those, looking at them and seeing kind of what a cohesive plan would be going forward, so that we're all on the same page.
I think I would just reiterate what I said earlier, that I'm not against any new field houses, any pavilions or whatever, but I think we have to be careful that we don't lose sight of maintaining what we presently have, but also, and I think that's an important consideration that we have to look at.
I think building on all of those comments, I think Bob hit it on the head with his first comment about really learning from the community what people are looking for, or what they will be looking for in the future in terms of trends. Because I don't know that we've ever really did a citywide canvas of needs. So I think that will help. My hope is that will help us create this focus and direction. So to his point, we're not lurching from idea to idea, fire to fire, and that we have this, this vision for what we need to do. And if there is a field house, if that emerges from this, that's the priority. All right, what's the plan in terms of, do we need more staffing to achieve that? How much does that cost? And a path to the future, I think, is really the direction that I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
And I think that also then gives us ammunition when someone comes with some way out plan that we say, well, here's the community. You know, they want you to spend $1 million on something, and it's like, wait a minute, you can get it done, and here's what the community asked for. So it gives us a little cover for decisions we make because we're following a plan now. And you know, you had your opportunity to present what was important to you, and unfortunately, you're the only person interested in that. So.
Yeah. Actually you know, I'm a planner, so I'm going to be biased on this, but that actually is a point that I try to make, and it comes up often in conversations is, what's your mechanism for saying no to something? And if you don't have, you know, data and a framework and a plan, then you should be able to move laterally, you know, like anything. You need to be flexible, like in an overall structure. But if you don't have any mechanism to really say no, because there's no basis to say no, it puts officials and it puts commissions in a sticky wicket to what are you saying no based on? Just your gut. And so that's a good point that you're bringing forward. Okay. So we've talked about a lot of things over the last hour. So I'm going to end with this. The last real question I have for you here is I'm going to make you prioritize a little bit. So what's your long-term vision for the department? So for Parks, Recreation, Youth, and Community Services in the next 10 years. And while you think about this, another way that I like to phrase this is, okay, it's 2030, 10 years from now. I will hope that this plan will have accomplished X. What is X? So I'm kind of making you prioritize a little bit based on what we talked about. What's your vision? Cast your vision. What do you want this plan to accomplish over the next 10 years?
I guess for me, it would be Page Park completed, and having some sort of winter functions for people, something for the people to get outside together with.
I would agree on Page Park. I think after, you know, I would like to see, you know, some major improvements, and whether they're facilities or, you know, paths or relocation of things or whatever. I think that's the important part of the 10-year plan is the whole looking at Page Park as a whole.
I think for me, I think the number, I think I had heard this, if I'm wrong, that in the state of Connecticut, we're number 2 as far as square feet of park space per person. Is that true? Is that the right statement?
Per capita, yeah.
Capita. So that's something that I think we don't play up enough. You know, when people are looking at towns to move into, they look at the education system, which we have an excellent education system here, but they also look for park space and activities and things like that. And I think that marketing around that might be something that in 10 years might make Bristol. I know it's affordable to live here. People are buying homes here because you get a lot for your money in this town. You really do. And I don't think we market that enough. And I feel like the park department and the youth and community services combined, along with just the marketing plan that the city is going for right now, could really be pushed that in 10 years we could be the next Farmington. You know, there's no reason why we couldn't be marketing ourselves in that way.
And
I love the parks here.
And I think going off of what Sandy is saying is that 10-minute walk campaign and making sure that every single Bristol resident is within a 10-minute walk of a park in order to reduce those barriers to access.
Yeah.
I said, you know, my idea on vision for the parks and recreation, and I've said this to Josh, and I think he hates when I say it, is you need to be the leader of the fun, and across the board, all the things we've talked about today. But I'd like in 10 years for people to say, what's going to happen this weekend? I don't know. Let's look at the parks website and see what's going on. And I think if we can meet those needs of everybody in the community, we're going to be in a much better place as a whole in 10 years. If we can meet those challenges that we're going to be facing and things we don't even know what's coming. You know, we're in the middle of it right now. So I think having my vision would be for people, for us to be the place people go when they were wondering what they're going to do this weekend, and they don't necessarily need to run out of town.
If I may say one more thing, and you touched on it a little with the 10-minute walk idea, which is something that would be nice to have some connectivity within the separate parks to be able to get to a park without having to, maybe even a bike path or something that would connect them somehow or connect people to them somehow. So yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I agree with everything that was just said, and I hope Page Park is completed and you can access the different areas easily and safely. And I hope we're in a place 10 years from now where we can really manage and fund, like Bob was saying, you know, and keep these, like, they're beautiful areas. And I get this sense in our community that people rather pay for park maintenance and upkeep than taxes, all other taxes. But I just hope we're at a place where we can actually maintain even like the newer areas we want to develop.
We can't put porta potties in there because apparently they light them up.
Well, that brings me to my concerns on the next question.
I was going to say. Okay. Yeah, the last question I have for you is the almighty questions, comments, concerns, suggestions that maybe we haven't discussed over the last hour that you want to make sure that the consultant team here needs to be aware of, we need to look into, we need to be mindful of, just anything else that maybe cropped up in your mind that just didn't have a place for it yet?
Well, to me, vandalism is a big issue. I mean, even the new bike path that was just installed, somebody pushed over apparently a huge log or something. They called it something, and it took a lot of people to do it, or it took some effort to do it. So it was going to be a lot of effort to get it back to where it was originally. It took effort to get it there. So we have it doesn't get played up enough as far as I'm concerned, but I think the vandalism is a terrible thing in our parks. You can't have anything nice, it feels to me. So
is there some way that we could have, I mean, this was a good start, and I know it's not the end, this is only the beginning, but is there some way that we would be able to contact you guys, via email or whatever, if something came up, while we're thinking about it, instead of waiting for a month for a meeting?
Absolutely. There's a couple different ways. And so one is definitely work through Josh and Sarah directly to get in contact with us. Another way is we do have a standalone website that's dedicated to the project. And on that website, we also have comment boxes. And so any comment that you fill out and submit, it literally goes to my email address. And so it's another way that I know exactly what the email form looks like, and I can document it and I capture that too. And so there's multiple methods, and I always say this. And if you get my contact information from Josh or Sarah, like my cell phone is literally my work phone, so you can literally text me, call me, email me. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Calls with stakeholders.
Yeah. So I've actually had one already this week, and I have two scheduled tomorrow. And then I know Jonathan and Holly have some scheduled. If not this week, I know at least next week. So we talked to different types of user groups. I talked to economic development already within the city. We've already talked to the youth commission last week. We're trying to get a broad swipe of just listed stakeholders that already have some sort of investment within the park system, just to try to keep seeing what are the common themes across all of these groups that we need to make sure that we test, and then what are some of the one-off themes that are coming up that we just need to, maybe it's a little bit more of a specific issue that we need to address. And so it's about how many people, Jonathan? It's about 20.
I think I have about 13. And you were 7 or 8 or so. So yeah, but about 20 or so.
Yeah, about 20, 21.
One-on-one calls.
Yes. Yeah. More, they turn into one-on-one calls because if we were there in person, we were going to conduct a little bit more focus group style meetings.
Right.
But we felt that even though this is essentially a focus group, we thought that it might be a little bit more fruitful if we did it one-on-one with, instead of doing, it was just for people's time's sake, because people are in different schedules right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
To provide the questions to the individuals we're going to speak with as well, so that they can get together with their constituents and their user groups, so they can get some consensus from some other people as well if they want to.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. So instead of having, from a certain Little League group show up, we limit it to 1 or 2 based on that group, but they're speaking on behalf of their group.
Yeah.
That's the part.
Just wishing I could listen in on some of those.
Me too. I agree, Bob. That was on my next question.
Well, we everything that we do will turn into we call it technical reports, and so we will have a public engagement technical report summary. So that will include the questions, overall synthesis of themes and how things were answered by the questions. And then typically we'll take all of our collective notes and we'll kind of put them as an appendix. So we won't ever say Cindy said this or Bob said this, but you'll start seeing just the overall comments that we've received from all the groups. And sometimes we can, if it was focus group style, we would put it the sports group said this. But since it's one-on-one, we're not going to say Cindy said this, Scott said this, Bob said that would be a mistrust on our part.
Is there a master list? I get reached out by Quebec River Association, there's golfers, midget football, and I would, when they reach out, I would just like to know, oh yeah, you guys are going to be talked to, I hear, on, go talk to so-and-so at midget football.
Yeah, so I can speak to this because I've worked to put the list together with these groups. All 3 of them are on the list.
No, I wasn't asking in particular. I was just saying that, those 3 groups I know very well. And
I would say if anyone reaches out to anyone and says, hey, I haven't, or want to contribute a group that we haven't thought of, certainly send me an email and we can get their contact info. There's still plenty of opportunity for them to weigh in and speak. We did a pretty comprehensive look at all the sports groups we've passed their contact along, Current Park Association, Pequabic River, nonprofits. We're looking at the gambit, but if anyone, we've missed, obviously feel free to email us and we can make sure that they're on there.
There also is going to be a public forum that takes place. We're still working out some of the details. It will take place virtually because at this point in time, we don't know when we're going to get back in person meetings. But that would also be an avenue for anyone in the community, but groups that we missed as well, to kind of speak and get their point across. And
could we get a copy?
Is the Bristol Sports Hall of Fame on your list?
The Hall of Fame itself was not.
Okay.
Could we get a list of who is at this time?
Sure.
And then I would encourage that if there was anyone else, you can email us, but also invite them to that public meeting.
Thank you.
Austin, can you outline the kind of next steps and, some of the upcoming engagements and where we're going from here, just to kind of bring everything together?
Absolutely. So the beginning part of the process is usually heavy public engagement. So like we talked about before, we would have been doing this last month in person, and so we're kind of augmenting that a little bit this month and heading into next month. So our immediate next steps are to fill out that interview and focus group kind of list and continue on with that process that we're doing right now. And then we are going to host a virtual public meeting. So in other words, we're going to use WebEx or Zoom, some sort of online system to where we're going to give a little bit of a presentation. So a little bit about the process, what we're trying to do, what is a master plan, what does it include, what does it not include, just so people understand about what it is that we're trying to do. And then we can have some interactive polling features as part of that online forum. Because if we were there in person, we would have clickers and we make it a little bit interactive and a little fun, a little more so than just us talking and people writing on flip charts, etc. And so we're going to try to still do that online, and then take that and post it on our website, crowdsourcing website dedicated to the project, and then and funnel people towards that so they can continue to give us input. Once we get through that process, we'll be putting together the synthesis that I mentioned earlier about the key themes and things that we've learned from the public engagement process. We work with ETC Institute, kind of like etc. ETC Institute out of Olathe, Kansas, and they conduct statistically valid community surveys, especially for parks and recreation and transportation. Those are their two big core competencies. So then we'll be working with them to put together a questionnaire that will be statistically valid for the community, and it'll be a hard mailed survey, but you also have the option of taking it online or over the phone. So it's multi-method, and it'll reflect your demographics and geographic distribution across your city. And then once we do that process, the planning team will shift gears a little bit and look a little bit more internally. So this is where we'll start conducting the recreation program assessment, like I mentioned, like a deep dive into your data, into trends locally, and what does the life cycle of a program look like for Bristol, Connecticut. So much like facilities have life cycles, so do programs. So once we get through the public engagement push, we will start doing more desk work, more research work from the standpoint of data, organizational structure, financing, those kind of things. Those are what we'll be focusing on after we get the survey out. And once we get the survey results back, which takes about 8 weeks from launch, then we'll also take that same questionnaire and we'll put it online through SurveyMonkey so everybody can self-select into taking that sample. So we don't want to discredit anybody from giving their input. We want as much input as we can, but we will just keep that data separate from our statistically valid sample. We'll actually compare and contrast the statistically valid survey versus the we call it anecdotal survey, because oftentimes they align a lot, but oftentimes the self-selected survey will also be a lot of special interest groups, and if they're well organized, that's going to reflect on the self-selected survey. So that's why we want to keep it separate. So we'll be doing this for the next month or so. Will be the heavy public engagement push. But then beyond that is when we're really going to start turning into more technical research and then moving towards needs prioritization. So that's, from my standpoint, what the next couple of months look like. And of course, being flexible with the stay at home and the travel and the adapting to whatever our world is looking like in April and May and June 2020.
So just to kind of conclude, wrap up a couple final comments. So if anyone has not yet looked, we do have a website that is dedicated to the master plan. That is bristolparkplan2020.com. I can resend that link out, but that's the best way. If you can go right on there, all of the documents that will emerge from this process are up on that site. You can also email directly your thoughts and ideas as they come up. That gets sent directly to the planning team, Activitas and Pros Consulting, so that is available to you. I will send the current list of stakeholders and who we've sent to. I'll send that on Friday as part of the weekly update. So if anyone, again, has people we've missed or other people that might have some relevancy to this project, you can just send that to me and we can add them to the list.
Good.
From my perspective, everyone, thank you very much for your time and flexibility for this format. And from our opinion, this has been a very fruitful conversation and really helping us provide a lot of context and direction. So just from our standpoint, thank you very much for allowing us to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, thank you. I'm gonna share my screen and we'll be on our way. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And we lost the mayor, Bob, so if